Hello YouTube and welcome back to another edition of 3 Wide. This week the Verizon Indy cars were at Toronto for the Honda Indy Toronto. And just a quick side note, is this the worst named race that the Indy cars go to? What's a Honda Indy Toronto? It's not the Grand Prix of Toronto. It's not the insert sponsor here 500 or anything. Like what is this? With all that being said, that's really my only problem with this race. I feel like this was a really good race to watch. There was a bunch of action. We had many different things happen to many different people. And overall, I think this was a good race in Toronto. So now we'll move on to my 3 takeaways from the Honda Indy Toronto. Number 1, the Iceman cools the competition. After a less than stellar performance last week at Iowa, or it looked like the 9 PNC Bank car was just lost out there, Scott Dixon and the rest of the number 9 Chip Ganassi racing team came out with a vengeance in Toronto. After Joseph Newgarden had his problem where he went to the back, Scott Dixon took the lead and never looked back. After qualifying second, Dixon really put a stranglehold on the championship here by getting his 3rd win of the season after he already won this year at Detroit and Texas. So now with Dixon having a pretty huge lead in the championship, even though Sonoma's double points, even being ahead this much is a very hard task for the rest of the field. We'll see if Dixon can sustain this lead or will have problems later in the year that can make this championship closer. Now on to number 2, season best finishes. Going into this season, many people believe that the expectations for Carlin Racing was to get a few top 10s here and there and then maybe surprise us at some tracks. Well, that came to fruition at Toronto, where Charlie Kimball in his number 23 car got his best finish of the season, getting 5th. So now we'll see if Carlin could carry this on throughout the year and get some more finishes that are up here in the top 5 and maybe turn Max Chilton around. Now on to the AJ Foyt team. Tony Kanaan got his best finish of the season, finishing 6th. Going into this season, I was a sucker for the AJ Foyt cars, thinking they both would win this season. And who knows, maybe if Kanaan didn't have his problems at Indianapolis, he could have been the one to challenge Will Power for the win. But here in Toronto, he got his 6th place finish, his best of the season, and he'll look to keep this going and maybe even contend for a win at Pocono, where I think he can potentially contend for a win there. But we'll see if this will be a turning point for the AJ Foyt cars, where we can point back and go, this is where Foyt started to turn it around in the season. And now on to number 3, big names with big problems. Going into the race in Toronto, I feel like many names that ended up on this list were some people's pick to get the job done and win in Toronto. We kicked things off with Ryan Hunter-Reay on lap 28, where he just locked up the tires and got into the tire barrier. Then on this same lap, Alexander Rossi, it looks like, ran into the back of Will Power, but there's a tree in the way so we can't tell, and his front wing was dangling underneath his car and almost broke off, and he drove around under caution for those laps. And also back to the aforementioned Will Power, who had a toe link problem, which seems to be a common problem with this car recently, as he's had many problems throughout the season, as the problems just keep piling up for the 2018 Indy 500 champion. And now on lap 34, things just got nutty, where coming to the restart, the leader Joseph Newgarden got up in the marbles and hit the wall. This had Scott Dixon take the lead. And on the same lap, there was a huge pile up in turn 1, where Will Power, Graham Rahal, Sebastian Bourdais, Alexander Rossi, who got airborne, Ryan Hunter-Reay, who had another problem, and Max Chilton all crashed into each other, bringing out another full course caution. Then we had Takuma Sato, who looked like he was going to have a pretty decent day, have problems where he just pulled off on the access road. And then coming to the white flag, many Andretti fans were happy that, hey, Marco's going to get a top 5 on today, and that would not come to be, as he didn't have enough fuel. He would come in to top off and he would finish 10th. So the final finishing order for all these guys who had problems: for Alexander Rossi, he rebounded to finish 8th. Joseph Newgarden rebounded to finish 9th. Ryan Hunter-Reay finished 16th. Will Power finished 18th. Sebastian Bourdais finished 19th. Graham Rahal finished 21st. Takuma Sato finished 22nd. So now we'll see as many of them look to turn things around in 2 weeks at Mid-Ohio. So now we'll get on to my 3 things to look ahead to on June 29th at Mid-Ohio for the Honda Indy 200 at Mid-Ohio. Number 1, Scott Dixon looks for his 6th win at Mid-Ohio. Even before going to Mid-Ohio, Scott Dixon is already the all-time winningest IndyCar driver at the Mid-Ohio track. So going into this Mid-Ohio race, many people will most likely pencil him in as the favorite to win, and if he can pull off the win, it'll be his 6th win at the track in IndyCar. And for the people that are trying to catch him in the championship, this could be bad news, and this also leads me to number 2. Can anyone reel in Scott Dixon's championship lead? After leaving Toronto, Scott Dixon now has a 62-point lead over Joseph Newgarden after Newgarden had his problems. The rest of the top 5 in points looks like this. Alexander Rossi is 70 points behind Dixon. Ryan Hunter-Reay in 4th is 91 points behind Dixon. And Will Power in 5th is 93 points behind Dixon. Now with the next stop on the Verizon IndyCar Series calendar being Mid-Ohio, which Scott Dixon has been the face that runs the place there. Those 4 are going to be trying desperately to cut this championship lead down to make it more manageable to fight for the title. And as the past history shows at the Mid-Ohio racetrack, that's easier said than done. Now on to number 3. Will this be the week that Robert Wickens breaks through? The past 3 races in the IndyCar Series have been pretty good for Robert Wickens. He finished 5th at Road America, 5th at Iowa, which really should have been a 3rd on the podium if he didn't stop for tires, and he just finished 3rd at his home race in Toronto. So now let's see if Wickens can build on this momentum and put his car in victory lane, which everyone's been waiting on this season. So that'll do it for 3 Wide. Leave your thoughts about Toronto in the comments section below and what you're looking ahead to at Mid-Ohio in 2 weeks. And thanks for watching.